Good afternoon, everyone. Dr. Stillman here with Amy Arp and Clark Engelbert. And today we are talking about
Hello.
how light interacts with minerals to create stunning energy. One of my favorite topics. And Jim was telling me that apparently people have actually complained that I don't talk enough about this. So we decided to sit down and talk about it. So most people, particularly in the health and wellness space, have historically been much too focused on matter, supplements, nutrients, elements. Believe me, we love our material things, our supplements and minerals and vitamins and all the rest of it.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, the energy side of the equation, because if you look at Einstein's general relativity, it's E equals mc squared. The energy side of the equation and the light piece of the puzzle really gets forgotten, which is why, the most stunning testimonials I get, the most amazing results I see are not people who just take or do or try mineral balancing or nutritional balancing or take supplements of any kind. They actually fix their lighting environment as well. And I think this is a huge misconception in the alternative integrative health world, as well as an area where most people sadly are completely out of their depth. And I just see people making all of these incredible mistakes and then not even realizing it, which is why we spend a lot of time talking about light in addition to talking about minerals. But when it comes down to how these two things work together in order to create energy, you have to understand the fundamental premise of the foundations of energy generation in the cell, which is that, and this is something that most biochemists, biologists, doctors, scientists don't understand and don't appreciate because they've never read Gerald Pollack's work. They've never read any of Gilbert Ling's work. They've never read any of the work of any of the people who worked off of those people and expanded their work, like Mae-Wan Ho, and too many to name, and more than, frankly, I can possibly remember. But basically, water ends up getting structured in cells by light acting on it. That structured water then can be used by the cell to create energy. This is not the model that the vast majority of people, even in the health and wellness space today, are working with. They're still working with the old, quite frankly, outdated ATP chemical energy model of energy generation. And that's why they don't get particularly impressive results compared to what happens when you start to fully comprehend the paradigm and fix the water and the light and the minerals, as well as vitamins and amino acids and all the rest of it. So what ends up happening in the cell is that light programs the water, but people don't understand that water networks really depend upon minerals in order to do their work. And I'm not, and I don't know if anyone really has elucidated the foundational quantum mechanics behind this, but you see it in clinical practice because people will come in and they'll say, I'm saunaing, I get plenty of sunlight, I have a good lighting environment, but unfortunately, they are not seeing the results or they're not feeling better. And then you look at their hair tissue testing or other mineral markers and you say, your nutritional status is a disaster, your total toxic burden is high.
Stress off,
yeah, you have the right bioenergetic signals, i.e. light, coming into your body, but you don't have the minerals necessary in order for that light to be really harnessed by the cell to actually generate energy and create wellness.
And I think a very interesting point to sort of piggyback off of is that with mineral balancing, we can reverse a lot of the consequences of this improper environment that you've been exposed to.
Yes.
And so there are consequences to this when you go through this over time, over a long enough time cycle, like, decades. This is really what it takes for people to be or to end up in a disease state. And so with mineral balancing, you can go back into the past, into these old patterns that you've been through that are present as a consequence of the accumulation of those poor choices, bad decisions, bad lighting environment, and all of that. Getting the lighting environment is extremely important. And I think the only other system really out there that works with mineral balancing is the quantum biology system. And what a lot of those folks are saying, like Gerald Pollack, Dr. Jack Kruse, of course, we can't not mention him. You know,
we have to heavily caveat because we just, man, do we butt heads on the amount of seafood that is acceptable?
100%.
Like I have to say this.
Yes,
We get people in who are eating huge amounts of seafood, and Jack says that's not a problem. And I have the mercury testing to confirm that he is wrong.
Right.
And then I have the cases where they get better when I mitigate the mercury with various things. So I understand this perspective people have. Fish is good for you. It's healthy. It's whatever. But I reviewed a really interesting paper on this the other day, and they showed that the risk of death was minimized with a fish intake for men of 105 grams a week. 105 grams a week is nothing. That is like 3.5 ounces.
Yeah,
I eat a 6 or 7 or 8 ounce serving of salmon for dinner, and that's normal. So, you know, there's a lot that I still have so many questions about the fish oil thing, and there's so much more to it. A lot of which I think is honestly, I think a lot of why fish consumption is linked to longevity and vitality, and why fish oil levels have been lauded as a huge marker for overall wellness. I think it has more to do with the fact that fish are rich in minerals, and a lot less to do with the fact that we need huge quantities of fish oil to be optimal. And I see this in the health and wellness literature all over the place. You know, today I was looking at a post by someone talking about how, you know, omega-6s are so bad. But as we've talked about many times, you know, people just don't appreciate how much toxic metals can accumulate in you know, vegetable oils, refined seed oils, and things like that. And so when people say, "Oh, it's just because linoleic acid is terrible," well, hold on a minute. You know, when you look at the refining process for oils, how do you know that there's not tons of not only petroleum products but heavy metals that are also still contaminating these?
That I think is a huge confounder. And Jack talks about a lot of this. The biochemistry studies are done under improper lighting environments. That's a valid critique. That's a phenomenal critique, actually. And you go,
yes,
he's on to something. But a lot of the nutritional epidemiology may be confounded by the fact that there are metals in the food more ubiquitously now than ever before. Favorite book up right now. You're reading it and you're realizing, oh shit, Clark might be right. Oh shit, Dr. Exley is right.
Don't Clark. Trying to keep our PG-13 rating, okay?
Sorry. I get fired up when I see anything by Dr. Exley. You know,
this book is real eye-opening for people who might be listening to this later. I'm holding up the book, Imagine You Are an Aluminum Atom.
Hold on.
I'm low-key disappointed, Clark, that it's not the British spelling and pronunciation, aluminium.
Oh, look at this.
But, you know, like people don't realize, like, for example, a huge proportion of the fish being consumed in the modern world is canned in aluminum. Somebody asked me that not long ago, saying, "Hey, Dr. Stillman, am I better off not eating aluminum canned fish or eating it because it's the most convenient and shelf stable?" I get that. But actually in this book goes over how there's no way that aluminum is not getting out of packaging and into people's food.
And it's also he talks about this as well, which is another sort of thing that was subtle. And I was like, how did I not recognize this before? But you were like, that's really true. A lot of the machines that are processing things, either cosmetics or foods or whatever, are aluminum based. They're made with aluminum. So, you know, there's a little bit of aluminum leaching or getting onto these products through processing in that way, right? But to your point about seed oils and, you know, omega-6s, and are they bad, are they not? And I think generally speaking, yes, there's a lot of good evidence that omega-6s or seed oils in general, vegetable oils, are really not great. They are inflammatory, but it's very hard to tease out. Are they inflammatory because of the oil itself, or are they inflammatory because hydrogenated fats, as one example, are made with nickel? And so a lot of hydrogenated fats have nickel in them, which is a very inflammatory, carcinogenic metal. It's very difficult to tease this out, right? And so, you know, that's a big confounding factor, in the same way that doing all of these biochemistry studies, you know, in a test tube under a blue light environment could confound a lot of biochemistry research. A lot of nutritional biology could be confounded by the fact that we are surrounded and in an environment that is suffused with metals at a rate that we have never even sort of fully grasped or can comprehend.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
I'm going to ask this question on here. This is a good question. So someone is saying, I have green pasture fermented cod liver oil and concentrated butter oil that was recommended from wise traditions for preparing for baby and childcare. Thoughts on supplementation with cod liver oil or refrain from, just before we move on to the next topic.
It's such a good question. So truly, I really would like to spend more time talking to some people who've gotten really deep into this literature, because I really want to know what they think. Here's another rub that's really important. How much fat you consume is going to determine how much fat your body can excrete, including toxins. One of the reasons why we are just so enthusiastic about GB3 is that it really, it moves the needle for so many people. And it's basically a bile acid supplement. That's at least 70% of what's in there. And there's, black radish extract and there's pancreatin, and that's great. But I'm counting on the bile acids in there to really move the needle for people, because one thing that's very clear from the literature is the more bile acids you have around, the more you're going to be able to excrete toxins, including heavy metals, including rancid fats, including fat-soluble toxins. There's some fascinating literature out there on how Gulf War syndrome may be subclinical vitamin A toxicity. And I don't know if you've ever run into this literature, either of you, but it's a fascinating hypothesis that really fits with the way I've seen vitamin A work in practice. So, for those of you who don't know, vitamin A is a fat-soluble vitamin. It at super low circulating levels, you will end up with lots and lots of problems with infections. But what's interesting about it is that all those patients, generally speaking, are also very severely malnourished. We're talking about, kids with protein calorie malnutrition in third world countries. And right. And the historic teaching is that when you give people vitamin A, you've got, say, like viral illnesses. And I hesitate even to say that word because I don't want to get smacked by the censorship bots on YouTube. But if you give kids like vitamin A, it helps with certain viral processes, which is why it's gotten such a reputation for cod liver oil and butter in the integrative health space for being good for people for recovering from colds and flus. But whenever we're giving vitamin A, we're also actually giving fat into the diet. And when you're giving fat into the diet, you're going to maybe increase the amount of fat and fat-soluble toxins and whatever that is excreted, right? This is one of my reasons or theories for why the carnivore diet can work so well for some people. What if they just have a high total body burden of fat-soluble toxins, and by massively increasing the amount of fat they're taking in, they're able to get rid of that? Because many of them will describe a very brisk bowel movement tempo after they transition to the diet, to put it mildly, which would coincide then with, at least theoretically, eliminating all these toxins. But back to Gulf War syndrome, what they hypothesize is that the liver gets overwhelmed with toxins. The Ito cells or Ito cells, I don't know.
I think it's Ito.
Oh, thank you, Clark. That store vitamin A.
Coffee talking.
Leak vitamin A, and then you get subclinical vitamin A toxicity, and it's slightly high circulating levels. This is why I check vitamin A levels in my labs. But it's made me wonder if, the vitamin A, I believe the vitamin A requires a very strong foundation of minerals, amino acids, fatty acids, etc., for it to do its work and not turn into a poison. Yes,
I've sort of been looking into this recently, and zinc is required because there's all these people that say vitamin A is toxic by default. No matter what, it's like the copper toxicity people. Copper is toxic no matter what, or copper is perfect no matter what. The truth is always in the middle. With vitamin A, zinc is required for vitamin A mobilization and utilization in the liver. So let's consider for a moment, a lot of people are zinc deficient. And it's not just zinc deficiency that people are dealing with. It's heavy metals mercury, lead, cadmium, aluminum, and nickel, which displace zinc and can affect the tissue distribution of zinc in the body, leaving maybe a local deficit of zinc in the liver. Then vitamin A doesn't work as well, and you don't have as much. I think it's retinol binding protein is specifically where the zinc is required and utilized for this mobilization of vitamin A from the liver. So it's a deeper, of course, it's a deeper story, and I think because of the ubiquity of the metals, this comes back to a story about the heavy metals influencing zinc, then therefore influencing vitamin A. And you have all these people that go on a low vitamin A diet, or they're doing this vitamin A depletion protocol, and they feel dramatically better, right? But I guarantee you, if we were to test their hair, we would see issues with zinc, which that's universal, and then issues with the toxic metals, which are also pretty universal.
Well, that's another thing about, right? I said Gulf War syndrome, right?
Mm-hmm.
What happened in the Gulf War? Well, there was massive exposure to fat fat soluble toxins because Saddam, as he retreated, had them set the oil wells on fire just as a distraction, obstacle, a scorched earth policy.
Literally.
And on top of that, one of the best ways to get a lot of heavy metals in your body quickly is to be around a lot of ammunition. Explosions. And one thing that we don't test on our hair testing at ARL is uranium. And we still use in the U.S. military anyway, is still using a fair amount of depleted uranium munitions. And, no matter what anyway, so the point is just there's tons of toxic stuff out there. And that's why we rely on the hair tissue testing to inform us of what is the state of the person's mineral system. And then we can intelligently devise a program of mineral balancing so that system comes back into alignment. And I think, can we announce today that we are opening up another cohort of HTMA? Can we do that? Are we ready?
Yeah, we can.
Awesome. Do we have a link to drop, Amy, by the way?
Let me grab one. Let me see if we can get one. I'll get one up in a minute.
And should we talk about how we're pivoting into the just simple HTMA secrets, and then the Jim mentions, not to mention all the fun shots vets get when they go to war. We're not gonna unpack that one. Leave that one. You can join one of our memberships or coaching programs if you want to find out what we're talking about there. But anyway, so we are decided to simplify the HTMA program for many different reasons. But bottom line is there's going to be HTMA secrets course plus coaching, which will be a test, HTMA test plus the course plus coaching. Amy will drop a link to that in the comments here. And then there will be an HTMA mastermind, which is for people who are practitioners or who would like to become practitioners. If you're already a practitioner, you're welcome to join that directly. But we are not going to entertain low-level questions. So we have to keep it high level. So understand that it's not just show up and ask us lots of questions that other people are not going to be that interested in.
Right. And it's for practitioners. If you have cases that you're working on, or you are actively working in the space, we can basically help guide you through tough cases, any practitioner related questions that you have about your own tests or your test of people that you're working with, basically.
Right. And
so the link that I just dropped is just the wait list. So we are not currently enrolling yet, but we will be enrolling in the next week or so. So if you are interested, please put your name on the wait list. You will be first to get notified when we do enroll.
Thank you, Amy. Holly, we have decided to drop the retesting course in favor of the practitioner mastermind. Because there wasn't as much demand as we thought there would be for as many levels as we'd created. Because Holly asks, are you still doing the retesting course? So if you want to do the practitioner mastermind, you can. However, we also have testing and supplementation available with Amy in our memberships at Stillman Wellness. So people can do that with her, and they can contact her directly, or just go to stillmanwellness.com, get on the email list. You'll get announcements about that. If you're going to do that, you've got to have a membership. So you might as well jump into the membership, and then you can get started with that. So should we get back to, let's get back to light creating stunning
Yeah, let's
energy.
get back to light. Mm-hmm.
Here's the really crazy tie-in. So Clark just covered how you need minerals in order to respond to and manage vitamin A. Vitamin A gets transformed into opsins, which are light reactive responsive protein in places like the eye, the skin. And so the crazy thing is that your whole light reception system is fundamentally dependent upon these minerals for, light transduction, signal transmission to occur. And that just, it's so elegant. It's so complex. This is part of why it's hard not to have a disdain for people who are like, oh, fluorescent lighting is no big deal.
Right.
Oh, you can just have some aluminum in your food. No big deal.
Right.
We're just going to throw some aluminum phosphate in here so it doesn't get too moist.
It's impossible to track the changes that occur from these small insults because they affect so many different variables once they're in the system.
I know.
That's the thing. But also another really interesting thing that I read quite a while ago in some old textbook, but there were some researchers that were able to induce blindness in animals by giving them a zinc chelator. So we know that zinc in the eye is really, really important.
Well, this is why, like, the one treatment for age-related macular degeneration is it's a bunch of different things, but I was looking at the ingredients the other day because a patient came to us on it. It is a horse-sized dose of zinc oxide. It's like 80 milligrams of zinc oxide a day. And, I just look at their rationale for using that much zinc. And I think, okay, guys, so you're telling me that the one thing you've found that works for this is giving people absolutely fantastical quantities of zinc. You're telling me this disease entity is skyrocketing in prevalence, but you're telling me that everyone over here who doesn't have this doesn't need any zinc. Or maybe they need some zinc, but we don't know how much. And it's, I find the whole premise that people need that much forever to be very flimsy.
Yeah.
And that's why we do the testing, of course.
Right. And that can also, zinc affects sodium and potassium, those interactions, right?
Yes.
That's very important. But I think, vitamin A becoming opsins is very interesting. There's a bidirectional relationship between the fat-soluble vitamins and the minerals.
Yes.
You know that vitamin D is a synergist for multiple minerals. So UVB radiation obviously hits the skin, creates vitamin D. Vitamin D, you will absorb more minerals with better vitamin D status. So light and minerals interact in that way. There's a sort of bidirectional relationship, I guess, now that we're sort of fleshing it out.
That's why it pains me to see people on these kind of haphazard supplement regimens because they don't understand that these things all work together. And when I see other clinicians just kind of like cobbling these things together, and it's like, okay, you now have the patient on like 30 supplements, and there's like zinc in 4 of them, and there's okay. Like, maybe make sure I didn't double dose you on. And so that's why we usually throw out their supplement protocol and they do better on the new one, which is usually fewer pills because we actually took everything into account.
Right.
But it's just painful to watch this happen out there. I mean, just every day it feels like another person. Okay, we're going to stop 10 supplements that you didn't need. You weren't getting anything out of, you weren't getting better. You weren't seeing results. Look at all these problems that you had on your various forms of tests that no one was managing.
So understanding the interactions between all these elements, right? We're talking about all the ways that like fat solubles and minerals interact, and minerals interact with minerals, and
I know
light interacts with minerals, and hormones interact with all of this.
Well, yeah, and that's one reason why people come to us with things. They're like, I have hormonal imbalances, and they'll do a program, and they'll change some lifestyle and diet things, and they'll do some minerals, and all of a sudden their hormonal imbalances that were attributed to the hormones have gotten better. Like, how many times have you seen that, Clark?
But that's what we're doing with mineral balancing, right? Is we are taking into account all of the different ways that these minerals especially interact with each other, so that we and I've harped on this enough, and I'm sure you guys are going to smile and laugh at me for saying this again, but it's the mineral system that we're really focusing in on. It's not
Clark, if anything is apparent to all of us, it's that we need to talk about it more.
Exactly. That's why I'm hammering it constantly, because everyone else is saying this online. Everyone is still just engaging in, well, I think I've got vitamin A toxicity, so I'm going to deplete vitamin A, or I need to megadose vitamin D, or I need to megadose one other nutrient.
So true.
What you need is to understand how all these elements interact. And in truth, we don't understand every single interaction, like with the ultra trace elements.
And spoiler alert, we don't have to.
Right. Won't. Some of it's still being elaborated on, but with this system of mineral balancing, we're taking into account how all these elements interact to balance the whole system. Yes. Once you do that, that triggers the elimination of the metals, and then you're off and running, and a lot of different things can improve once you start to really go through these metal eliminations.
Well, it's so funny. I had a case recently, high-powered, very successful businessman came to me, had high risk of heart disease, and primarily what we did to tackle this was mineral balancing, and I decided needed some iron depletion, so he went out and donated blood. We did some allergy testing, we did some organic, we did the whole thing, because it was like, okay, it's silly to run a company as big as yours and not go ahead and spend the money to get
the full Monty,
the full testing, right? Like this is just going to be worth it for you, especially because for 3 months we sort of didn't have full on buy-in or full on effort, and I sometimes I give people enough. I let people make their own choices, but he wasn't making progress, and I said, look, you need to take this really seriously for 3 months, and he did, and his high sensitivity CRP dropped from like 4 point something down to like 1.6. And that essentially corresponds to you're going from the high risk category for heart disease to the average risk, and the average risk, but it's a reduction of about 50% if you're looking at high sensitivity CRP as like a linear marker for that. And he said to me before we got the most recent test back that confirmed that we had successfully dropped his inflammatory levels, he said, what if it hasn't come down? And I'm just sitting there racking my brain, like, what could I possibly have missed? Like, what other tests could I have run? What could be going on in his body that I am not accounted for? And it's always possible that you've got those people who maybe they had huge exposures to this toxin or that toxin, and we don't have a good test for it, and maybe they need to do more sauna or more this or more that. But sure enough, his numbers dropped. And now the trend for high sensitivity CRPs coming into the practice that are elevated, dropping quickly, is consistent enough that I'm going to look into publishing it, because it's really clear to me that some combination of what we do at the practice, if you come in with an elevated high sensitivity CRP, we are going to bring it down in 6 months, a year. It just happens.
What did his hair test look like?
Copper toxicity with small amounts of heavy metals. It was not overly impressive, Clark.
Was he like fast oxidizer or slow?
Slow.
Oh, interesting. What was the NA to K ratio?
What do I look like?
Questions. Let's go. Well, the reason I ask about the NA to K ratio is the CRP and those inflammatory markers very much correlate with a high sodium potassium ratio. Very, very reliably, and that's one of a few associations that you can make with these other markers on the HTMA. But high NA to K ratio is very much associated with active inflammatory state.
Yeah, and so at the end of the day, I guess where I was going with all that is, like, we don't have to know all of this in order to get great results. It's very reproducible. Whenever someone is not getting the results that they're looking for, I sit down with them and I go back over the case and what could we be missing and what else might we need to do? And usually it's just that they have had a long period of dysfunction, and sometimes I feel that they really do need the something extra. Like we'll use bioidentical hormones. We use things like prednisone in low doses. I've used, I still use pharmaceuticals because there's such a powerful role for them when they're used appropriately. But they just end up turning into this endless just gambit of tire patching over and over again that is such a waste of time. So anyway, light, minerals, stunning energy, something. What else?
Yeah, well, another interesting fact about light and minerals and maybe easy water. In Pollock's book, he talks about how you can build EZ using minerals.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Calcium, magnesium, zinc.
Very important.
Or a few that he had mentioned. So to my mind, right, maybe if we take a step back and understand that life itself is this weird dance and interaction between light and the elements. That's really what it is. And we can see this in everyday life. We can see this with like pigments that are made from minerals and metals. When they're illuminated, we are sort of made aware of what that element is through light, right? And so I think this conversation of light and minerals and elements and more broadly is really a conversation about life itself. And there's another really interesting thing that I was reading, maybe 2 years ago or a couple of years ago, but like in certain nocturnal animals, zinc allowed for the evolution of their night vision, right? So we're even going back maybe even deeper into the question of like life itself. Evolutionary changes that have occurred over time are facilitated by this interaction of light and minerals, right? So it goes even deeper and it gets into like almost like a philosophical conversation at a certain point.
But it really is. And it is because, this is sort of one of my gripes with like functional and integrative medicine is that, a lot of people just have no circumspection about the fact that with all the tools in the modern MD toolbox, you can make people feel and behave however you want them to. You want to be laser focused, we've got a drug for that. You want to be recovering from your workouts like you're Wolverine. Jay Campbell literally has a stack of peptides and supplements that he calls the Wolverine stack. You want to be a 75-year-old man with a testosterone level of a 25-year-old man, you can do that. And I have this conversation with men who, for example, want to go on testosterone or women who are interested in bioidentical hormones. And I just say, look, these have a very profound effect on how you feel and function. And the minerals are the same way. And that's why we talk about them like zinc, the masculine, gentle masculine mineral. People will notice these shifts in their personalities when you put your finger on the scales of what's coming in with things like zinc, copper, manganese, all these other things.
That reinforces this notion of the importance of them.
Yes.
You can elicit such profound changes with minerals and light, right? Tweaking those two variables, especially, that says something about how they're used by life to sustain and procreate and all of that.
And that is also, I think, why there's such an agenda from the powers that be that want to disempower people and who want to misinform people that these minerals and metals and hormones aren't foundational. Oh, you can just take this pill. You can just, it's fine. Just paper over the problem, patch this tire for another 5-10 miles. Don't worry about the underlying state of your condition and your minerals and your light. Your light environment. And that's why, like clockwork, every testimonial I collect, I ask every single person the same question or same series of questions. And one of them is, what gets the credit for your improvement? And then I want them to give me a percentage. It's like, what percentage of it was the group coaching? What percentage of it was the light therapy? What percentage of it was hormones or supplements or this or that? And nothing gets the lion's share almost ever. I've had like one case where somebody said 99% of my improvement was the supplements. He hadn't gone to a single group coaching call. He got that improvement with like overnight with one supplement protocol. And he was blown away. And it was actually 2 supplement protocols, both of which he had astonishing results with. So it's very important for people to understand that all of this information is being suppressed and called misinformation or disinformation. Like we had a video removed from YouTube yesterday.
Really? Wow. Yes. I think a lot of this as well, it's that a lot of this is on the cutting edge, especially like in the photobiomodulation space, the light.
Yes, that's true.
That's in biophysics. That's all being sort of elaborated on. And
what's sad about it is like, it's information that in some respects is 70 years old now. Like to really go back to the root of biomodulation.
Yeah, that's
But
true.
because it's not talked about in medical school and it's not taught in hospitals, it's not used in hospitals. You go to the average doctor and you're like, hey, light can treat my whatever. They're like, no, it can't. And you're like,
Yeah, I know.
Right. And what about like light? What about certain frequencies of near infrared penetrating your tissue, activating cytochrome C oxidase and affecting your electron chain transport mechanisms?
Yeah.
Minerals have that effect as well. So there's another way that we
Right.
can kind of think about the interaction between these elements, another specific mechanism, right? And that's part of why those
and
near
so do vitamins that we pack with the minerals.
Exactly. But it sort of speaks to, like, you know, the use of those near infrared saunas that Brian at Sauna Space has been sort of putting out there for years now. Part of the reason why they work so well is not just the heating effects, but the effect of light and the effect of light on the electron chain transport, and possibly even improving mineral metabolism as a result of that effect.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So,
Right. Veronica asks,
Yeah, I was
can
going
you
to
explain how the fat intake helps excretion of fat-soluble toxins? Yeah, just simply that the more fat you're taking in, it stands to reason the more fat's going to be coming out and excreted. And I've looked at a lot of fecal fat studies and not seen clear trends, and I'm not sure if I trust the ones that I've seen. But I mean, my simple point is just, it seems like the amount of fat you take in can have a huge impact on the flux of fat-soluble toxins out of the body.
That's good.
Yeah.
And then I have a question from someone in one of the H2MA courses. So we'll just address that now, and then we can touch on light again at the end. So she's pregnant, and she says, I'm also doing a high-dose vitamin C protocol, currently taking around 10 grams per day, namely to help with the birth and reduce risk during pregnancy. Should I keep doing this while also doing mineral balancing or not?
Yeah. So this is a very, this is definitely something I would prefer to take on like a one-on-one basis, because it can be a nuanced question. But in general, there's a reason vitamin C for pregnancy, of safety of things in pregnancy. There's like 3 categories. I don't remember them all off the top of my head, but if anything's over the counter, generally speaking, it's safe in pregnancy. The exceptions that come to mind are things like, for example, there's a ton of herbs that are technically labeled as contraindicated in pregnancy. So you always check the herbal, because there's so many of them that have some side effects, and most of them are not that well studied, so they may actually be safe, but you would never want to take a chance. For the nutrients, I've never seen or heard of them creating a problem, but I also think that, the dose makes the poison. And
especially when you're mega dosing something like that to that degree.
And when I use vitamin C, I use it. First of all, I'm very picky about which type I use, because most of them will derange your pH in long term, a direction that's probably not good for you. And number 2, a lot of vitamin C sources are just trash. They're just not worth buying, which is part of why I'm very picky about my vitamin C. And I use one that's buffered and it's mineralized, so it's not going to derange pH, and it's going to actually bring a fair amount of minerals into the body. But then I use it on a case-by-case basis, and it's always based on one-on-one consults with people. So, I wouldn't do it, but I also wouldn't. I'm not like the treating physician in this case, so I'm not going to dispense advice, so to speak.
A couple things I would just say, things to think about, would be your oxidation rate. That matters when megadosing vitamin C. So if you're a fast oxidizer and you're megadosing vitamin C, that could actually be a direct contraindication for that, especially in pregnancy, where you want to be safer, you want to be more cautious. I just think megadosing in general is not necessary. It's not required. There are certain maybe situations, acute situations, where you could use high dose vitamin C. And it makes sense, but especially in pregnancy, what we're talking about in pregnancy is we want to be as cautious as we can. So I think that first do no harm principle that's like on another level when you're pregnant and you're carrying a child. So, to me, the mega dosing thing is not a great idea. Vitamin C, you're going to get, if you're on mineral balancing, you're going to get a decent amount of vitamin C, especially if you're a slow oxidizer. I think, generally speaking, if you're taking like Megapan and Renamide and maybe either Endodren or one other supplement, you could be getting anywhere, if you're a slow oxidizer, around 1 gram or 2 grams of vitamin C per day. But it's balanced with these other things and other nutrients that make it safer. But 10 grams, that could actually influence the oxidation rate, I think. Maybe too quickly. You might need to retest your hair sooner. So there's a whole host of issues that come to bear when you mix and match mineral balancing with megadosing nutrients. It just doesn't, generally, this isn't saying anything about your specific case, something to think about and discuss with your doctor. But it's just too much chaos in the system, and you're already getting vitamin C as a result of being on the mineral balancing protocol. So my question would be, what is the necessity of taking all the 8 or 9 more grams of vitamin C? I don't see the point of that.
So going back to kind of the fish oil thing, when we were talking about, we didn't quite answer Gabriella's question, so maybe we'll just wrap that up. I know it's a hard question to answer, but if you want to just touch on,
I thought about it too, because I guess I'll just mention, like, my wife's pregnant, and I'm not sure if we should. Did you not know that, Clark?
I did not know that.
Oh, wow. I'm in that place where I've like forgotten who I've told and who I haven't told.
Wow, everyone's getting pregnant now. I gotta keep up.
Join us, Clark.
Probably get married first, Clark.
Probably.
So we've talked about this. Should we get her on fish oil? Should we not? I truly haven't had the time to actually investigate the literature to the depth that I would like to actually have a really firm, solid opinion on it for the health of baby, let alone fertility of mom. What I can tell you is that I have spent, really, I started working in my own practice pretty much 4 years ago now, and I've been in integrative medicine since 2017, on and off, different practices, different places. And I've seen people do remarkably well on all kinds of different protocols and modalities and whatever. I have yet to have anyone come back and say, I changed the omega-3/6 balance in my diet. I started fish oil. I started krill oil. I started borage oil, and say, oh my gosh, this was the thing that made me better. It's not that they're not important, but they are not the most fundamental and foundational elements of your body and your well-being. And that's why I'm never surprised when someone comes back and says, oh my gosh, I tried minerals and I feel amazing. Or, oh my gosh, all of a sudden I'm having these crazy detox reactions. Likewise with vitamins or high-dose vitamins, likewise with macros. Like, people will go keto, carnivore, they'll go plant-based, they'll go on a strict slow oxidizer protocol or over onto a fast oxidizer protocol, and they'll be like, oh my gosh, finally I'm getting enough protein and the right mix of fats and carbs, and all my problems are better. So I've seen so many different things work, and I've seen a lot of things fail, and I have never been that impressed by someone changing their fatty acid balance in their diet. And I'm really skeptical of the people who say this is the most important thing for anything.
100%. And what I would say about that too, another interesting thing that we can tie back to what I was saying earlier about a lot of nutritional epidemiology being confounded by the fact that metals are in the foods and in everything, basically.
And not to mention the PCBs, the polyfluorinated compounds, all these
other
chemicals.
Exactly. There's there's tens of thousands of other chemicals that are out there. The requirement for omega-3s, or like DHA, may be, and this is just me theorizing, might be much higher if you have a higher toxic metal burden and chronic inflammation. right? So a lot of these studies where they show some people respond really powerfully to omega-3s and like DHA in particular. And they notice increased cognition, better brain function, those sorts of things, improvements in depression and mental health markers. That may be a compensatory effect of the metals causing inflammation at this low level chronically. The DHA, the EPA are helping mitigate that. And that's actually helping their cognition and lifting some of that low-grade depression and anxiety that they have. But it's actually the result of the metals.
It's the metals.
It's the metals.
I know, right?
Yeah, Gabriella, I would agree with Dr. Stillman. I'm also pregnant, and I really am flip-flopping between like, what do I take for omegas, fish oil, all of that, and I haven't spent sufficient time either, but I think I'm just focusing on diet, like really focusing on diet, getting enough healthy fats in my diet, enough variety. And I think that is really important. So just want to say that.
There's a nutritional requirement for those fats. So you need some basic threshold.
Absolutely.
Right. So, I think sardines, but if you want to use the cod liver oil, that I think is still a decent option. And there's the issue is that there's just a million different opinions on all of these things. And you go, you just need to get some of the omega-3s at the end of the day.
But at the same time, like we don't spend a lot of time worrying about this in the practice to get people well.
We don't.
That was one of the things we said earlier. It's like, you don't have to understand all this stuff. But I mean, we keep practicing. I keep going. I don't have cases that don't respond to all the things we do. The part of the foundation of which is the mineral balancing, and then the rest of which, or a lot of the rest of which, comes down to light. So, yeah. Should we wrap it up, guys?
Yeah,
Any last parting thoughts on light and minerals?
We went all over the place today, didn't we?
It was good.
I thought it was fun.
We were winging it, right?
What's that?
We were winging it.
Like we kind of always do.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to add, but there are just a lot of interesting interactions, not only between the minerals and the metals, but certainly with light and minerals. And I think it just speaks to how our biochemistry, how our bodies are run, which they are. You're getting signals of light for your circadian system, and that is in some ways like activating mineral pathways and minerals absorption, and that protects you against heavy metals. So, in the future, I think there's going to be, there was a really interesting study I read on the circadian rhythm of zinc. So that's where a lot of this is going. There's going to be maybe not a melding, but a combination field where they're looking at light and how the minerals and metals interact with each other. But it's sort of like taking what's going on with circadian biology or biophysics and sort of melding that with a lot of what's going on in ionomics and, how metals and minerals interact with each other.
It promises to be very cool, but it also promises to upset an enormous number of highly, highly profitable apple carts.
Oh yeah.
Because it's just, I mean, when you really start to look into all this stuff, it just spells doom for a double-digit proportion of modern developed economies.
Yeah.
And it's not that like those industries have to go away, it's they have to stop using aluminum. They have to stop treating artificial light or fluorescent light like it's healthy and normal. Like, I don't think it's healthy to live under artificial light.
That's another, I mean, maybe we can wrap it up with this, but like there's a large number of industries that are extremely well-funded and massive that have incredible pull in Washington and other international political centers, right? Yeah. So I think Exley talks about this in his book, but the aluminum lobby is maybe even bigger, depending on how you cut it and measure it, than like the pharmaceutical lobby in Washington. So everyone knows about big pharma, and yeah, that's true, but no one knows about the aluminum lobby and their efforts to silence scientists like Exley, who are raising the alarm bells about the toxicity of aluminum and how it causes Alzheimer's and dementia and other things like autism as well.
Tell it like it is, Clark.
Let's go.
On that note, great to see you all. Thanks for tuning in. Sign up for our HTMA waiting list that Amy dropped in the comments, and get in touch with her.
And the Mastermind. We want to see practitioners come into the Mastermind.
Yes.
It's going to be really fun. I'm actually really excited for that. Talking to practitioners on a daily basis or bi-monthly basis. Well,
I think we should actually make it weekly, Clark, if we get enough people in there. I think
if we have enough demand, then I think we might not weekly, but there are training programs out there. I think our practitioner training program is by far the best. It's not even close. When you put together the video modules and like the group coaching, I don't think there's anything like that, but having the ongoing support so that you have like some mentorship as you go out into the world and deal with real cases. I wish I had that. I had to figure out a lot of this stuff on my own. I did work with Dr. Wilson for a time, but even after working with Dr. Wilson, it was like, I would have hard cases. I'd be like, I need another set of eyes on this because it's not that I didn't have any idea what was going on, but I just I need feedback on this because it's borderline or difficult. And, there's a lot.
Not just what's in the test. Like we can teach you how to interpret the test pretty quickly, but knowing how to handle people and deal with people.
That as well.
And also how to run a practice that doesn't run you ragged. Really important to understand.
There's definitely a science. There's very deep and interesting science to this and the interactions and the metals and the minerals and ionic mimicry and blah, blah, blah. But there's sort of an art to dealing with clients and getting them through mineral balancing successfully so that they, eliminate their metals and can move on with their lives. Getting them through those elimination reactions gracefully is sort of like another huge aspect to this approach.
So if anyone is interested in the Practitioner Mastermind, you can reach out to me at Amy, AMY, at stillmanwellness.com. So feel free to email me and I'll give you more information. Awesome.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Have a great day.